Ever feel like your emotions are, well, kind of like a roller coaster sometimes?
Totally. It's like you're along for the ride, but not really in control, right?
Exactly. And that's why we're diving into Mastering Your Emotions by Rae A. Stonehouse.
Great book.
It's packed with strategies you can actually use.
Yeah.
Like, no more just wishing you had better emotional intelligence.
Right. You actually build those
It's
skills.
like, how do we actually live with these emotions, not just, wish them away?
And especially in today's world, right? Everything's so fast-paced.
Right from the start, Stonehouse talks about how easy it is to just push those feelings aside.
Oh, yeah. We've all been there.
But he's like, that actually blocks us from the success and peace we want.
It's like trying to run a race with, like, a backpack full of rocks, you know?
Okay, I can picture that. Definitely weighing you down.
Oh, yeah.
So no more ignoring those feelings. One of the things that really struck me was his take on self-awareness.
Yeah, it's deeper than just knowing yourself, isn't it?
Way deeper. He actually gives you exercises.
Like practical stuff you can do, not just think about.
Like those journaling prompts. Have you tried those?
Oh, yeah, they're really insightful. Like he'll ask, what specific emotion am I feeling? Not just good or bad, but like, what's the flavor of that feeling?
It makes you realize how often we just slap a label on it without really digging deeper.
Absolutely. Like the other day, I was getting super impatient in traffic.
Ugh.
And I realized it wasn't just impatient. I was actually anxious about being late to meet a friend.
Oh, so it was more than just the traffic itself.
Exactly. Stonehouse helps you uncover those layers.
And he connects that to triggers, which I thought was really helpful.
Oh, for sure. Once you know what sets you off, you can, prepare yourself.
It's like knowing your emotional kryptonite, right?
Totally. Like, for me, it's when people interrupt me. Makes me crazy.
Oh, I know that feeling. So then how do you deal with that once you know?
Well, that's where the self-management part comes in, and Stonehouse has some great techniques for that.
Yeah, that's a whole other beast, right? Like, okay, I know I get anxious when
you have to talk about this book on a podcast?
Hey,
Yeah.
maybe. No, but really, how do we actually manage those feelings once we're aware of them? So how do we manage those feelings once we're aware of them?
Well, Stonehouse talks about this thing called reframing, and it's, super powerful.
Reframe. Okay, so literally looking at it differently.
Yeah, instead of saying, ugh, I'm so bad at this, you reframe it to, okay, I'm still learning, and that's fine.
So it's not about pretending everything's perfect,
Yeah.
but shifting your perspective a little.
Exactly. And Stonehouse has this 4-step process for it.
Oh, he loves a good process.
Doesn't he? Identify, challenge, reframe, act.
Okay, break that down for me.
So first, you identify the negative thought. Then you challenge it. Is it really true? What's the evidence?
We can be so hard on ourselves sometimes, right?
Totally. Our brains love to focus on the
It's
negative.
like that negativity bias thing.
Exactly. But once you challenge that thought, then you can reframe it. Find a more positive, but still realistic way to look at it.
Okay, I like that. And then the last step, act. That's where the rubber meets the road, right?
Exactly. It's not enough to just think differently. You got to act differently, too.
Love that. Okay, so we're getting a handle on our own emotions, but what about understanding other people's emotions? That feels like a whole other level.
Right, and that's where social awareness comes in.
Okay, so reading the room, basically.
Kind of, but it's more than that. Stonehouse talks about this thing called radical listening, and it's like next level listening skills.
Radical listening. Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So it's about really truly focusing on what the other person is saying and feeling, like putting aside your own judgments and opinions.
And not just waiting for your turn to talk, right?
Exactly. It's about being fully present with the other person. And Stonehouse gives these really practical tips, like paying attention to body language, reflecting back what you hear.
It's like showing them you're really trying to see the world through their eyes, not just your own.
Exactly. And that makes such a difference in relationships. He has this great example in the book about a manager, Jane.
Oh, yeah, Jane. She's like the emotional intelligence rock star of the book.
Totally. So there's this conflict between 2 people on her team, right?
Workplace drama.
The worst. But instead of getting sucked into it, Jane stays calm and uses her radical listening skills to help them work through it.
See, that's what I want to be able to do. Stay calm in the middle of the storm.
Right. And it all ties back to that self-management piece, right? Like being able to regulate your own emotions, even when things are intense.
Like she's speaking a different language.
And that's what makes her such an effective leader, right?
Yeah.
She's emotionally intelligent.
Okay, so we've talked about self-awareness, self-management, social awareness. That brings us to the last piece of the puzzle, right? relationship management. Okay, so we've talked about self-awareness, self-management, social awareness.
Yeah.
That brings us to the last piece of the puzzle, right? Relationship management.
Exactly. And this is where it all comes together.
Because let's face it, relationships are where our emotions really get put to the test.
Oh, 100%. And Stonehouse has some really insightful advice for navigating those emotional landmines, especially in parenting and romantic relationships.
Yeah, those can be tough. What are some of his key takeaways for those areas?
Well, with parenting, he talks about the importance of validating a child's emotions even when they seem irrational.
Ooh, tell me about it. Like, my kid will have a meltdown because the toast is cut in half, not triangles.
Right. But Stonehouse says instead of dismissing those feelings, we need to acknowledge them. Like, hey, I see you're really upset about the toast. It's okay to feel frustrated.
So it's about helping them name those feelings, even the messy ones.
Exactly. Because that's how they learn to understand and manage them.
It's like giving them emotional literacy skills.
Right. And in romantic relationships, Stonehouse talks about the importance of creating a safe space for both partners to express their emotions.
Oh, that's so important. Because if you don't feel safe being vulnerable with your partner, who can you be vulnerable with?
Exactly. And that requires that radical listening we talked about earlier, that ability to truly hear and understand your partner's perspective, even when it's difficult.
It's like choosing to see things from their side of the street, even if you're standing on the opposite sidewalk.
I love that analogy. And it's not always easy, right? Especially when emotions are running high.
Totally. But Stonehouse argues that that's when it matters most. That's when we need to really lean into our emotional intelligence.
And that brings us to another important point. Emotional intelligence isn't just about how we feel, it's also about how we make decisions.
Oh, that's interesting. I never really thought about it that way.
Yeah, we often think of decision-making as this purely logical process, but emotions play a huge role. Like, how many times have you made a decision based on fear or excitement?
Oh, all the time. Like impulse buying online.
Yeah.
Definitely driven by emotion.
Exactly. But with emotional intelligence, we can start to recognize those patterns and make more conscious choices.
So it's like hitting the pause button before reacting.
Exactly. And asking yourself, okay, what's really driving this decision?
I love that. It's like bringing that self-awareness piece full circle.
Right. It's all connected. And that's what's so amazing about emotional intelligence. It touches every aspect of our lives.
It's like the secret sauce for a more fulfilling life, better relationships, more success at work.
Totally. And Stonehouse reminds us that it's a journey, not a destination.
It's like we're all works in progress.
And that's okay. The important thing is to keep learning, keep growing, keep mastering those emotions.
On that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners?
Pick up mastering your emotions. Seriously, it's a game changer. And remember, emotional intelligence is a skill. And like any skill, it takes practice. But the rewards are so worth it.
Couldn't agree more. So to our listeners, keep practicing, keep exploring, and keep unleashing the power of your own emotional intelligence. Until next time.